Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back, dear brothers and sisters from all around the world in a new episode of Signs of Prophethood. This is your host, Omar Khalid. And this episode is going to be unique. We're going to talk about some of the misconceptions around Prophet Muhammad ﷺ at his time and also right now in our daily lives. We are going to deal with these misconceptions, and we're going to also answer the question whether it is the right approach to answer all of the misconceptions that are thrown at the Muslims, and what is the right approach to deal with that. But before this, we would like to welcome Sheikh Ibrahim Zidane. Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh.
Wa alaikum assalam.
I'm very happy to see you again, Sheikh.
It's my pleasure.
So about this title, about the misconceptions around the Islam, it's not a new thing. It was done maybe through ages, not only with Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, with all the previous messengers and prophets of Allah. So first of all, before answering the attacks, we would like to answer two questions. First of all, is it right to answer every misconception thrown at the Muslims? And also, like, how to deal with some of the doubts that can come to some of the hearts of some Muslims. They are sincere. They don't feel like they want to like attack Islam, or they have malintention inside their hearts. So how to deal with these questions?
Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salam ala Rasulullah wa ba'd. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent his messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam with the truth. And this truth is the religion of Islam, to worship none but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and to follow the Prophet alayhi salatu wa salam. And the Quran being the miraculous words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the life of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, this is the absolute truth. Being a believer means that a person believes that this is the absolute truth. Truth is not a relative thing. Every single human beings on the face of earth, if they don't have this one straight and perfected in their understanding, they would always have a problem. There's no such a thing as the truth being relative. It's truth to me, but it's not truth to you. Some things, yes, but there is something called the absolute truth versus falsehood, and that's even the two words are present there. So because of that, if a person is upon the truth, then he would act according to the truth in a different way than those who having the matter is a relative matter. So misconceptions or attacks and so on, as you said, this is the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on earth. The people on falsehood, they would not just sit idle when it comes to the truth prevailing. So they have to attack it. But the way the more a person study the truth, the more that we would see these attacks as are nothing but fake, weak, because it cannot stand the challenge of the truth. Should we answer every single attack and so on? Actually, there is nothing for us to fear as Muslims, because the religion of Islam is perfect and it's the absolute truth, and everything in it is the truth. So to oppose whatever false claims, and to oppose that, it actually brings even more strength to the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and it's a form of da'wah, of course. Those who would fear maybe these types of things are the people of falsehood. But then there's an issue. A Muslim should not expose himself to all kinds of doubts and attacks and so on, not because there is weakness in one's iman. This can be the case. A person is not knowledgeable enough. He doesn't have means of the truth to support this. Plus the heart keeps on changing, and the person needs to be upon the truth and not to expose oneself. It's not just about matters of being convinced. The hearts can get sick and diseases in the hearts because of the sins and so on that can lead the person to disbelief. So a person has to protect himself to stay upon the truth by knowledge, of course, and that pushes away the matters of doubt and so on, and refuting this with the simple truth that we have in the deen of Islam.
So for the Muslim, he doesn't seek, or she doesn't seek to see the doubts or to watch videos and read articles attacking Islam.
Right.
But if there is a doubt in the heart, or maybe something that popped in my mind I want an answer to, how can I deal with this? What's the right way? What's the right approach?
Protecting one's religion, again, this is a very serious matter. And if it happened that already the doubt comes in, or a person is raised not in the right way and so on, then to deal with this is to push it away with knowledge. And not just to ignore it, because this is a very serious matter. Any doubt and so on, a person has to push that away by turning to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sincerely, truthfully, asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to cure the heart from any doubt, and also to seek the path of knowledge, to learn and to see what the Quran says, the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, the people of knowledge, and with the principles and the foundations of the deen. And most of these doubts are really something that is not based on materialistic or facts, but rather based on opinions. You look, and there's many different things that people say, and when people claim something, and we'll see that we can repeat that with every doubt that is being spread, who said that that claim is the truth versus what's in the deen of Islam is falsehood. And this is opinions, what is it? And it's, of course, it's different from one thing to the other. The more the person examined the matter, the more that he would see the truth very clear versus falsehood. And it goes in such a harmony with the goals of the deen of Islam. You know, people, when they don't have the same goals, they might see the truth as falsehood. If someone, their goal is not part of their goals is to keep the family strong. They don't care about family unit and having the rights of children to be united with their parents and so on. This is not a thing to them. So therefore, they would look at the rulings in the deen of Islam with observing the hijab and the rights of the children and marriage and divorce and so on as something that contains their freedom, and it makes it very strict and it's not very good and so on. Why? Because they're coming from a totally different background, that it's different than the goals of the deen of Islam. Someone wants to be intoxicated all of his life. You know, he doesn't see the need for him to be focused on things and to use his intellect. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us to be intellectual, wants us to be sober, not to be intoxicated. You know, and therefore the truthfulness in the heart of the person, when he seek the truth, he would find the truth perfectly in the deen of Allah.
And maybe that is shown, Shaykh Ibrahim, at the beginning of the da'wah, the beginning of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ calling others, the disbelievers and so on, to Islam. And even all the prophets, they were attacked by the same attacks. Like they were said like they are crazy and they are liars. And actually those two, they are not compatible.
Right.
Because if somebody is crazy, then how can he be a liar? Right. Because he believes what he says. So it's like throwing things like red herring without any basis. They don't have the intention to learn. They have the intention to just attack and just destroy everything.
And that's the thing, with matters of knowledge, when a person examines what people say, it has no basis to it whatsoever. Or it's based on totally different ground and principles, that these principles and grounds, either people are deceived by it or it's falsehood to start with. So why should I agree to a falsehood principle that I have to answer based on these differences, that it's falsehood versus the truth? And this also has to be clear. The foundation has to be the same. People have to be standing on the same ground. And one of the basic grounds that everybody should believe in, and that's in the innate of every single human being, is the belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There's a creator for the heavens and earth. If everybody agrees to this, and it's by necessity, by the way, therefore, things are not left like this. There has to be something. He would not leave his creation like this. Believing in the prophets of Allah, believing in the message of the Tawheed. There's no one worthy of worship except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So things fall in place like this. Then who has the right to say what is right and what is wrong? Human beings, they fail miserably. And again, it depends on their ignorance and their knowledge or backgrounds and so on and so forth. So the truth has to be shown clearly from above, from the creator of the heavens and earth. How does that communicated? Through the revelation from Allah.
So what happens basically is the people, they flip the way that they base their arguments.
Right.
Yeah, they start attacking without we have in previous episodes we talked about, Shaykh Ibrahim, like the message of Islam and the Quran, the preservation of the Quran, the Sunnah, how miraculous it is. This is the beginning of anyone who wants to learn the truth. He doesn't go and attack something without knowing it. He has to know the details about it, the miracles, the linguistic. What did this message, we can say, challenge people with? To start with, not to start with we have some questions, of course, we're going to ask them, for example, why did the Prophet Muhammad had multiple wives? This is irrelevant of the message itself. It's irrelevant if he's truthful or he's sent by Allah or not. It's just because of maybe certain traditions, certain things we are indoctrinated with. So maybe because of sick minds, we just have minds if we see a certain image, we just try to project our own feelings and our own lust and so on.
This example that you just mentioned, the Prophet ﷺ having more than one wife, who said that this is something wrong? And why would we agree to defend it in a way, no, it was because of this and because of that, as if it's something bad or something that is not correct? Who said? Who made this as a rule to say that this is not a correct way? Actually, this is the opposite. We attack them with the same way. Actually, this is a sign of perfection. A sign of perfection that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created a man to be a man. And the man is inclined towards women, women are inclined towards men. But what is wrong is if a person, as a result of these types of desires, he spread corruption on the face of the earth, or live a life of carelessness and following the desires and evil and so on. And that's not the case of the Prophet ﷺ. But more than that, for the Prophet ﷺ to be a prophet of Allah, the best men ever walked on the face of earth, and a human being, have the desires of the human being is not different than the human beings, but controlling these desires with the responsibilities of it to show the human beings how to live one's life with controlling our desires in the perfect way. This is more perfect than someone staying away from fulfillment of the desires in the right way. But we can even add, even from the same concept of others, you know, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forbade people to have, for men to have more than 4 wives. This is, you know, people all over the earth throughout history of mankind, they have more than that even. And even in the Old Testament and things like that, Sulaiman alayhi salam, for example, have 99 wives and things like this. It was never condemned. Again, as long as it's done in the right way. But in the deen of Islam, it's only limited to 4. And when you think even about the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, when this ruling came down to the Prophet ﷺ, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordered the Prophet ﷺ that it's not permissible for him to have more wives or to exchange whatever he has. So therefore the Prophet ﷺ is getting less than what other Muslims are getting with the ruling of 4 wives. 4 wives means if a person is married to 4, that's the limit. If he divorced 1, he can get married to another one. He can divorce 4 of them and get married to another 4, right? But the Prophet ﷺ does not have this luxury. Only the 9, and if one is divorced, one dies, that's it. And when we look at them, the 9, except Aisha radiallahu anha, all of them, they have previously married before, old in age, some of them, you know, and the power of the Prophet ﷺ, the perfect character of the Prophet ﷺ, to be a husband to 9 wives, and what these 9 wives said about the Prophet ﷺ, said about what he does at home. Perfect human beings, you know, and how that a person, as they say, if a person is able to be a successful husband with 1 wife, he can rule a country, as they say. You know, imagine with 9. And what did they say about him, alayhi salatu wasalam? This is a perfection. This is one of the evidence of prophethood to the Prophet, alayhi salatu wasalam. But the very ground level of this, who said that this is not something that is perfectly perfect?
And maybe as an answer also to this, Shaykh Ibrahim, correct me if I'm wrong, that Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he didn't marry until the age of 25, and he didn't have multiple wives until the age of 52 or 53. So if anyone had these like sick thoughts that they have about the Prophet, he would have started from an early age. He wouldn't wait until this. Right.
Now, and this is also with that, there is nothing wrong. I mean, the Prophet ﷺ said, "Hubbi ilayya min dunyakum." It was made beloved to me from your worldly thing, women and perfume, and وَجُعْلَتْ قُرَّةُ عَيْنِي فِي الصَّلَاةِ, and made the comfort of my eyes in salah. And so this is a perfect sign that the Prophet ﷺ is a perfect human being, but things are done in the right way. And again, as you said, if the Prophet ﷺ was after his desire like this, he would choose the most beautiful, the youngest, whatever there is, and this was not the case of the Prophet.
Very beautiful. We're going to take a break, inshallah, Shaykh Ibrahim, and when we come back, we're going to talk specifically about Lady Aisha. May Allah have pleasure on her, because this is like a special misconception about the Prophet. So, dear brothers and sisters, we're going to have a short break and come back to talk about some of the misconceptions around the Prophet. Stay tuned. Welcome back, dear brothers and sisters. We're talking about the misconceptions about Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, and we're talking about the marriage to Lady Aisha. May Allah have His pleasure on her. So, Shaykh Ibrahim, this is like a special, like we can say, misconception made around the Prophet, because they say, like, how is it possible for an old man to marry a kid, and they call, between brackets, a kid who is 9 years old? How can we answer this?
No. This is another thing, and then we answer back, what's wrong with that? You know, and who said that this is what is right for them to say otherwise? The reason why they're saying this, because of how much evil comes as a result of this when there's age difference in the world that we're living today, and how many people are pedophiles, and they commit so much sins as a result of this, and they spread corruption and so on and so forth. But when it comes to the case of the Prophet ﷺ, it was never something that is being even addressed among the people, because, and this is something that people, when they see clearly when they go outside the city and the city life, where it's not supposed to be the thing that dictate for humanity how to live their life. When you go outside the city life, people are different. People, they do things in this life in a different way. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the creator of the heavens and earth, He created the men and women physically in such a way that they reach an age where they fit to get married and so on. And for a person to get married and to have these relations between a man and a woman, and marriage specifically, there's a physical requirement there, and there's also mental capacity. So for someone, age is irrelevant.
Yes.
If the body is fit for such a thing, and if the mental capacity is there, then this is perfectly perfect.
SubhanAllah.
And therefore, the marriage of the Prophet ﷺ to Aisha radiallahu anha, when they consummated the marriage and she reached the age of puberty, this is something that is normal. And usually the evil that comes into the minds of the people, as these children, so-called children, if something bad happens to them, which of course we do not approve anything evil bad happens to the children, it causes trauma to them for the rest of their life. Aisha radiallahu anha, she lived so long after the Prophet ﷺ. The Prophet ﷺ died when it was said she was 18 years old. And she lived till she was 60-something years old. What did she say about the Prophet ﷺ? She was one of the most of the companions that narrated a hadith from the Prophet ﷺ. How much khair and goodness and blessings that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saved this religion by someone like Aisha radiallahu anha narrating things that only her and the like of her, the wives of the Prophet ﷺ, would see from the Prophet ﷺ. Very detailed, specific narrations about the Prophet ﷺ with perfect praise to the Prophet ﷺ. There is nothing the like of it in history of mankind. And it's the amazing part is, as one mentioned this, those people that talks about this, sometimes they have in their literature, in their history, they always talk about beautiful relationships between certain men and women and so on. Many of it is not in the boundary of marriage. And they end up committing suicide and the like of this, like Romeo and Juliet and all of these things. And people
actually, Sheikh Ibrahim, sorry to interrupt, Juliet was actually in the story. It was like in the 16th century at Shakespeare. She was 13 years old, and her mother was telling her, "You are getting old, so we want you to get married."
Right.
And this is just 4 centuries ago.
And in the reality, till now, in some laws in the West and even in the States and some states, 13 years old, this is a very valid age for people to get married. And even before that, and even in the previous books, what was the age of Maryam, Mary, the mother of Isa, when they claim, of course, she never got married, and she was a virgin, but how old she was.
They say she was 12.
Right. Yes. So this is never a subject till the newly invented rules that people
So it's a logical
made in their
fallacy.
life. Right. Physically, a person is not bound to certain age. Some parts of the world, they grow faster than others. Mentally wise, and also with matters of physical ability.
Actually, the Delaware also in the United States in like 1800s also, the age of consent was 7 years old. So like not even 9.
Right. And because of that is the outcome of it, if it's something decent and good, we're talking about people that are the purest people on the face of earth. Not evil people intoxicated all of their life. And usually in the life that we live in, those who fall into the being pedophiles and so on, it doesn't happen like this. It's drugs. It's going from one evil action to the other. The extremity of falling into sins that makes a person reach to be abnormal. And you want to compare that to the purest people ever walked on the face of earth, when they are pure people that bring goodness, the relationships that brings all kinds of goodness and human dignity and honor and so on, not this evil sense of desires and following their desires.
And those who attack Islam most of the time, Shaykh Ibrahim, they don't read into all the hadith, all the tradition. They just take part of it and they say, okay, this is a mistake and so on. And they don't know that after only 2 years or so, there was hadith al-ifk, the big lie made and the slandering of like Lady Aisha, that they said that she did so and so in a forbidden way. They wouldn't do this if she is not a grown-up lady. They wouldn't do that. Only after 2 years after marriage.
Right, and that's a very good point.
SubhanAllah, and we can add also that Lady Aisha, the contract. There was a contract, and we know that in Islam you can make a contract before consummating the marriage. It was like at 7 or 6 with Lady Aisha, and then there was the consummation of marriage. So why would the Prophet Muhammad wait until this time?
Right.
So all of these things, they don't make sense actually for them.
And in the reality, the actual facts of life and marriage and so on, marriage in the deen of Islam, this is actually one of the things that, because people, they follow the ways of others, you would find even among Muslims, the age of marriage is shifted so much, and
18,
the
21.
way, right, and the way that we raise even our children becomes very abnormal, really. When people are adult physically, the way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created them, but we claim that they're still children and they're not responsible for their actions. And if they commit a crime, they are treated differently, even though they reach the age of puberty and so on. In Islam, the age 7 years old is a very serious age. He's still a child, or she's still a child, but this is the age where you teach them and you order them to do what is good, because they have senses, they have some intellect, they would understand what is right and what is wrong. So that you prepare them till the age of puberty. When it comes, they are ready. You're not going to start from the age of puberty. You already started from early time. Because the age of puberty, according to what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from us, this is the age when a person is fully functional. If he dies on that age, if a woman reaches the age of puberty today, and she dies today, she's either going to be among the people of Jannah or the people of the hellfire, fully responsible for their actions. Is it 21? Is it 18? Is it 15? It depends on what the person is, from what place to the other. And this is a very serious and a very major thing in that whole subject, is the age of puberty and preparing oneself before that to be sane, to be responsible for one's actions, not the foolishness that many are living their life with today.
SubhanAllah, very beautiful, Shaykh Ibrahim. So what about the main attack? They attacked the Prophet ﷺ from his time, and now also they say that he took from maybe previous scriptures, and also they say like he was like learning like from another person, like what they said, Quraysh, they said this, that he was learning from somebody else.
This is something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned in the Quran, and refuting this call. And when they claimed that إِنَّمَا يُعَلِّمُهُ بَشَرٌ, that a human being is teaching him, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala responded by saying, لِسَانُ الَّذِي يُلْحِدُونَ إِلَيْهِ أَعْجَمِيٌّ وَهَذَا لِسَانٌ عَرَبِيٌّ مُبِينٌ. That the tongue that they speak, these people that they claim that they would teach the Prophet ﷺ, is A'jami, is not the Arabic one. And this Quran is clear Arabic, miraculous in itself, for people to bring the like of it. And there's no doubt that the message of the Deen of Islam, since this is not something brand new to humanity, it's already an extension to what the previous messages are when it comes to matters of Tawheed and the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone and so on. And then you add to this the rulings that comes with that, and the miraculous words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and what's mentioned in the Quran that challenges humanity. And if someone is teaching, where are these individuals? And why don't they come up themselves with the truth? You know, and having the Prophet ﷺ as someone that is illiterate, doesn't know how to read and write, and to be given this miraculous book, which is the Quran, as the living miracle till the Day of Judgment, with its powerful linguistic and meanings and knowledge and facts and rulings and so on and so forth, which is for people, you know, thinkers and intellectuals and millions and billions of people to examine, and they would never be able to bring the like of it. And all of that is just by simple someone sitting and teaching, you know, someone else some words or some rulings and so on. And Islam brings more than what has been previously mentioned to the previous prophets.
SubhanAllah. So what they're saying basically, that when Prophet Muhammad he took from other nations, also what doesn't make sense is when we look into the stories of the previous like scriptures and so on, of course they're changed and some changes are into them, but we see stories are a little bit different and they correct the mistakes.
Right.
Like for example, like at the time of Prophet Yusuf, we see like there's a difference when about the ruler, that he's a king, he's not a pharaoh. And in the Torah, he is like not a king, he's a pharaoh. And as at that time of Prophet Yusuf, there wasn't like pharaohs, they weren't like controlling the country. They were like other people who were occupying the land, and they were called kings. So this is like a correction of what they said. If the Prophet ﷺ, God forbid, he was taking from other scriptures, he would take everything. He would take every detail. I mean, also about the attacks on the prophets. When they say like very bad things in the Torah about the prophets, that they make for fornication and they like do drink sometimes beer and so on. The correction of this in Islam, that we don't see this, we see the opposite. We see that they are forbidding people from evil, they are enjoining with good and so on.
One time actually I looked at a PhD thesis for someone that is comparing Surah Yusuf and the story of Yusuf alayhi salam, the way it is in the Quran versus in the Old Testament.
Wow.
And it's amazing differences, one of which that you mentioned. Very specific details that shows the precision of the information there. There is nothing is the like of it.
SubhanAllah.
And the story of Isa alayhi salam himself, Jesus the son of Mary. You know, how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned his story in the Quran.
SubhanAllah.
And it's not the same as others would have previously, and bringing back people to the original truth of it, and that is that he was not crucified, he was not killed, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala elevated him, and he will be a sign of the hour. And what the Prophet ﷺ even said of prophecies and the signs of the hour that will come, that even prophets before he never mentioned anything of this nature. This is all revelation from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not teaching or learning something that has already been previously mentioned, and it's already, people have the books of it. It's not similar like the previous books, like the Torah and the Injil and the like of it.
SubhanAllah. That's very beautiful, Sheikh Ibrahim. Like, time flies as usual. We had like some other points maybe we can cover maybe next time, inshallah, in part 2, because we couldn't like cover everything. Thank you so much, Sheikh Ibrahim. Thank you. Jazakumullah khairan. Thank you so much, dear brothers and sisters. We hope that until next time, we're going to continue part 2, the misconceptions around the Prophet ﷺ. Until then, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.